Hi, I'm Trevor Pugsley, at Dell Enterprise Business Manager at Ingram Micro, and I'm here today with Dan Boyles, Microsoft's Commercial Evangelist, to talk about the features benefits of Windows Server 2019 and how Dell Resellers can maximize the benefits from it. So Dan, let's dive straight in and talk about the features of 2019.
Yeah, sure. I think before we start, if we just have a very quick look at kind of why we're pushing people into 2019 and what's best for them. And we can kind of break it down into 3 points, really. IT stress points now in the workplace are massive, and the complexity that each and every single custom user has at the end is it's getting quite hard for all of us to manage, both from a Microsoft perspective, but also from a disti and a reseller point. And there's three kind of real things that we delve down into that. Legacy systems, cost and complexity, and cloud skills. So obviously in the environment we're in now, some users have maybe hardware that's 10 years old, some have hardware that's 2 years old. But with those comes quite a few challenges when we look at data compliance and privacy, but also end-to-end security. More legacy environment you have, the harder it is to make sure that it's fully compliant with internet security and with also security end-to-end. The cost of complexity with the rising cost is a massive thing to look at, because it's so hard to support someone that has such a complex system, especially if you're trying to add to that system. You're trying to add new hardware into it. It just gets to kind of a mire that you don't want to be in. But also cloud skills as well. So custom solutions are required for cloud-based environments now. And if you're not in a 2019 or minimum of 2016 environment, really hard to get to. So there's some key stuff on Windows Server 2019 that kind of really set it apart from anything that's happened so far. So from the evolution from 12 to 16 to 19, 2019 is now the operating system that kind of bridges the on-premises and the cloud. So there's four things we want to look at, and that's the enhanced security capabilities. It's the unique hybrid data center platform, unprecedented hyperconverged infrastructure, which is a very big word that we throw out quite a lot. More simply, it's called HCI, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail shortly. But also, we've got faster innovation for applications. So if you're in an environment where your customer needs to deploy and create applications, it literally takes minutes to hours to get that deployed out in your cloud environment. So they're the key things that kind of sort of split it apart on there. If we look at the security stuff first, there's three things on there. So the first one is you're able to manage privileged identities. So whereas before administrators had to, we use this example, say you need an engineer to come in and do some work on your data center over the weekend, you had to give them access to absolutely everything. So just enough administration now basically means that you can say this person will have access from 5 o'clock Friday until 6 o'clock Monday morning, and they only have access to these containers or these parts of the thing. So it's called just enough administration. But you've also got just-in-time administration as well. So just-in-time administration is basically saying that they will only have access for this 2-hour window, and after that 2-hour window, they will never be allowed back on again unless we go back on. You're able to treat the server more as an operating system that you can secure. So there's two different things built in there. You've got Windows Defender Exploit Guard, and you've got Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection. Now, we were chatting earlier, and you had a really good analogy on this.
Yeah, so the way it's been described to me previously is that Windows Server 2019 assumes that the network has been compromised, whereas 2016, designed in an earlier, more naive time, assumes that the network is secure. So inherently, 2019 has got better security features embedded into the operating system, and it's not relying on security elsewhere.
Exactly, yeah. I think that's a really good thing there, is that using the AI features that are built into Server 19 and kind of the Windows 10 operating system, it's always learning and always trying to protect itself. So as soon as a threat is received on it, it will almost go into lockdown mode and make sure that the rest of your system isn't compromised and breached. But no, that's definitely a good analogy. Ultimately we want to break it down to the end user, because if we hit the end user with Defender Exploit Guard and Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, sometimes they just don't know what we're talking about. If I'm honest, I look at stuff sometimes and go, I need this simplified to help transfer that knowledge. So when we're looking at it from a sales point, I think definitely the analogy you just used there is that imagine having a system that always thinks it's under attack. It's just going to become stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's actually a great thing to have in there.
So I know that Microsoft now has really embraced the Linux community, and there's a lot of features in 2019 that help the environments that have that mixed operating system going on.
It does, yeah. I know from a Microsoft point, it's very clear that we need to make sure that, if we go back to my very first point, we've got such a complex operating system base now. When you go out, for me, when I visit clients, sometimes you may have 1,000 people in a business, but 20% are using Macs, 20% have to use Linux for that environment. So we've really kind of embraced that. And there's a lot of new features now that actually allow Linux to run seamlessly in it. So one of the biggest thing is virtualization and Linux in virtualization. So we've got you're able to secure the virtualization fabric. So you're able to run Linux inside a protected virtual machine with shielded VMs for Linux protected network traffic. And you can also flip of a switch and also have encrypted subnets on that. So one of the biggest thing you were saying before we started this as well was you run Linux at home, right?
Yep.
And historically, it's not been easy to put Microsoft stuff on that and run it, but how are you finding that now? It works seamlessly, right?
Yeah, to the extent where I use Visual Studio Code to do my little bit of home programming.
On the security stuff, so as you said about the Linux, in 2016 there was a few features on there that we still retain in 19, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown now of what we can do, because a lot of it is now focused on VMs. So the Enhanced Windows Defender, which is ATP, that's only in 2019. Now shielded VMs for Windows, they were available in 16, still available in 19. But this is the first time we've started using shielded virtual machines for Linux. Mm-hmm. So Linux users are now fully protected on that. And then you've also got a couple of things like cluster hardening, VM Connect for shielded VMs. That's a conversation for another day, so we won't talk too much in detail about that one. And then in 2016, you're still retaining some features such as device guard, dynamic access, remote credential guard, etc., etc.
So let's come back to the hyperconverged piece.
Yes.
Because we're seeing really strong demand for storage spaces direct, especially in education markets, places where the end user wants good performance, but absolutely needs reliability. Mm-hmm. And be it a 2-node or 3-node, that kind of low-end hyperconverged, we're really seeing strong growth. And I know that 2019 has got features built into it that really take hyperconverged forward. So things like deduplication on the file system, not available before.
I mean, some of the benefits on that, like you say, you've got unified management. So it's a browser-based HCI management. I'm going to take this back just one step just to talk about HCI and exactly what it is quickly, and then we can look at what the features are on it. So HCI, traditionally, if you go on, I'm going to put this out on a slide as well. We'll send some slide backups with the podcast if you want to download it. Traditional infrastructure used to have your Ethernet switch at the top, then you had your miscellaneous appliances, your hypervisors, your storage fabric, and then your SAN at the bottom. Whereas now, actually, you just have your Ethernet switch at the top and you have a very small stack. So that's true hyperconverged. Standard x86 servers, your local drives, and then you've got your magic of the software to get that done. So if we then see what that means, the evolution of Windows Server hyperconverged, your Hyper-V, that's kind of around from 2008, then your storage spaces direct, SSD, and then your software-defined networking. But actually what you're doing with 2019 for the HCI is you're really driving forward and future-proofing yourself going forward on that. So you've got unified management. It basically means that at any one point from a single browser, you can manage your entire storage network that you have and your entire server network on there. You can redeploy power at the click of a button. You can move servers instantly over at the click of a button, and because it kind of runs on Azure and the stack behind it, it just means that you've always got the best return on investment for the investment that you have put into that physical infrastructure. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And just on that note, so bearing in mind that Dell are by far the largest vendor in the hyperconverged marketplace, the relationships that they have with all of the hyperconverged vendors. When our resellers are out there talking to the end users, there's a couple of routes they can take with Microsoft and Storage Spaces Direct. You can either go for a build your own and define the specification of each node exactly the way your end user wants it, following the rules that are put in place by Microsoft on what hardware is allowed. Or you can go down the Dell Ready Node for Storage Spaces Direct route, where the performance level, the reliability level, and the support level, most importantly the support level, are predefined by Dell. There's no cost increase in taking the Ready Node route. There's just a very tightly defined specification of what that node is going to look like. Well worth speaking to your account managers about.
Yeah. I've got 3 slides here that I'm looking at, which again I'm going to put up as a downloadable file, just as a PDF that you can share out. It's definitely worth taking it, as salespeople, take it into the end user and show them physically, and it shows you every single feature that server from 2008 revision 2 to 12R2, 16 and 19 has, so you can really get a visual kind of difference between what's happening with them. When it comes to the hyperconverged infrastructure stuff, it's really key. There's quite a lot of stuff in that just makes it the easiest for the network manager to deploy, manage, and secure. And actually, the HCI gives everyone the best end user experience possible. Some of the stuff in here, one of the biggest things that I have conversations about is virtual network peering. I'm not going to go in too deep on that. Again, I'm going to put in a load of stuff on the back that you can look in as much as you want to about it. But basically, virtual network peering, it provides high-speed connectivity between 2 virtual networks. It basically alleviates that, if you're doing data transfers, backup transfers, storage transfers, it makes it as quick as possible. Because effectively they're sat on the same network. You've got the ability to, whereas before, if you wanted to move a server from one physical server to another, you used to have to create the same IPs, create the same gateways, reroute all the paths, make sure it's all ready to go, and then hope it works when you've done it. With this, using the exact same principle, but within a virtual environment, I can redeploy, say, my Exchange server back over to its own dedicated server at the click of a button. And the magic of the software behind it does it all for me. It's such a simple and intuitive piece of driving software behind it. It just makes that data center manager's job as simple as possible, allowing him to kind of redeploy that effort into something else. There's a couple of things that have been taken out when we look at hyperconverged infrastructure. So 2016 had a high availability RDS connection broker and remote FX vGPU. Now that's not in 2019.
So when we look at the differences between 2016 and 2019, I know that one of the key areas is performance. And 2019 has a smaller footprint, so you can run more virtual machines on the same hardware, which is great for everyone, cost saving. However, there is a thought that says, well, if you're going to use a modern operating system, you need to run it on the modern hardware. And with Dell's PowerEdge 14th generation hardware, the audience need to know that that hardware was designed specifically to run Windows Server 2019. So a lot of the performance features, a lot of the security features of the hardware is geared around the expectation that it's going to be running Windows Server 2019. Let's just quickly talk about the audience and the people that we're going out and talking to about 2019. And I think we've got 3 key people that we need to convince that 2019 is the way to go. Mm-hmm. And that's the actual end user, the IT department, and the guy that's got the checkbook.
Yeah, I mean, I'm out speaking to people 4 or 5 days a week. I'm in front of disties, resellers, partners, end users, and I talk about server a lot. And we throw the word out end user quite a lot, but actually for me, when I talk about it to Microsoft, or from a Microsoft point, the end user actually, like you said, covers 3 people. The end user is the actual end user, the person that's going to be picking up the laptop at the end. You've got the end user, the person that's going to be deploying it. You've got the end user, who's the person that's paying for it. So certainly the CFO, finance, buyer, you've got the IT guy, and then you've got me, who uses the stuff. We've got a duty of care of all of them, and historically it's not always been the easiest pathway to make sure that all three of those boxes are ticked, to make sure they have the best experience when they're doing it.
Because they've got different needs.
They've got different needs,
and they're seeing their computer environment from a different perspective.
Exactly. You go about 10 years ago that probably 90% of the workforce used to work in an office with a terminal that had a mouse and a keyboard, and whether you're running that on a virtual machine or just a physical tower that's there. Whereas now you've got remote workers, you've got flexi workers, you've got hot deskers. They need to know that they turn it on and it works at all times. They need to know that wherever they are, they're protected at all times from an end security point. But also they turn it on and they're going to get the same service no matter where they are in the world. For the IT professional, we need to make sure that when we sell them a product, that it's as easy for them to roll out, deploy, and manage as the technology gives at the moment. Again, historically with previous versions, it's compared to the availability power now, it's not always been the easiest to do it. So we have the features such as the total overview of the network, where you can manage everything from a single window. You can see the health status of all your servers. You can see exactly what users are using, what output. You can if there's a failure on one of your nodes, it will tell you straight away what the failure is and how to fix it. It's self-learning, self-aware. So we're empowering the IT professional to also maximize his the return on investment for his time, to make sure that when he's deploying it.
And actually, there's a really good slide that we'll put into the deck from Dell, where with their management platform, obviously it's optimized to show the Dell hardware, but equally you can manage, report on your HP, Lenovo hardware that's out there as well. And a lot of that cross-vendor reporting is enabled by Microsoft's operating systems, and a kind of common interface between them all.
Yeah,
excellent.
I think lastly on that third person that we look at, there's also the person that's going to be signing off. You as salespeople, you've got to convince them more than anyone. The IT manager can put the case forward, but it's going to be the person that's paying for it, the team that's paying for it, and how. Let's be real. We're in a sales environment now where DaaS and SaaS is a massive thing. Especially from the end of support from Windows 7 to Windows 10, a lot of hardware refreshes have been happening on that. If you're hardware refreshing the end user's devices, we really should be opening the conversation about let's future-proof you for going forward by buying 2019, looking what hardware we can refresh on the back end as well. Because if you have a whole load of new devices on the front end, well, the back end needs to be also as new, so you can really make sure you're having the best experience for all round. Yep. But where it comes into in its own is, like I say, it's the way that we pay for things. Inherently now we are in a DaaS environment, device as a service, software as a service. But Microsoft kind of brought that full circle now, and no matter what deployment you're doing, makes it easy for you to have, okay, we're going to be paying annually for this, or we're paying monthly for this, but it gives everyone a good case to go forward. The end user's getting the best experience they can by taking advantage of all the great new features in 2019. The IT professional that's managing the network and the team that's managed it, they've got the best experience because they can make the network as secure, as quick, as reliable, as easy to deploy as possible. And you've got the CFO that's got a really nice case saying, I need to pay for this on this date, and then it's done. So as long as you're out there speaking to people face to face, just tick those boxes, because every end user should be looked after. And Microsoft have tried to make it as easy as possible, but so have Dell with their stuff as well. So.
And at this point, I have to wave my Ingram flag and say we also have Ingram Finance, which provides the most flexible leasing, financing options for however the end user wants to pay for it. And we'll include all of the support costs, the installation costs, deployment costs, all within the one finance package. So speak to your account managers. Licensing is a interesting conversation we have every year, and we have because not everybody's fully. Let's be real. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing to license on a server. I'm going to be real on this one. I get confused sometimes when I look at the rollouts and stuff.
let's look at your licensing, because I know you've got some stuff you want to talk about that.
Yes. So plan A from the Dell side, when you want to put an operating system onto a Dell server, plan A is to get a ROC license. And a ROC, ROK, is a reseller option kit. And the reseller option kit is supplied in a box. And in that box you have a DVD and you have a license key in a securely held envelope. The ROC is the cheapest way, I should say, the lowest cost way of obtaining Windows Server, always. A ROC license is tested and verified. It includes the device drivers. Dell have put their own content onto that DVD so that the server installation is optimized for use on their hardware. It gives you a one-stop provisioning, which means you put the DVD in, you let it get on with it. It installs everything on its own. So the reseller or the end user, or indeed Ingram services, if you want us to do it in our config area, it's a very slick, easy process. But every vendor has their ROC. So HP have their version, Fujitsu, Cisco, Dell, everyone has their own ROC version. Must bear in mind it's BIOS locked. So a Dell ROC license will only work on Dell hardware. The other criteria is it can only be installed on one server. So once you've installed that ROC license on your particular PowerEdge server, that's it. It will spend its life on that server. It can't be transferred.
So on that note, let's have a look at how CALs work. CALs, we say this a lot. What is a CAL? Client access license. What does CAL mean? What does a CAL mean to you?
So, we have three versions of ROC licenses. We have Windows Server Essentials, we have Windows Server Standard, and we have Windows Server Datacenter. Windows Server Essentials is the lowest cost version. It does not need client access licenses. So you pay for the server operating system and that's it.
I think, sorry to interrupt there, for the Essentials as well, this is a small business that won't be using HCI, that won't be getting, that maybe has between 25 to 50 users, or 25 users and 50 devices. That is the maximum. So Absolutely. That is a very SMB, they wouldn't need anything more than that because they don't even probably use the full scope of the product. So
it's almost like an install and forget.
Exactly, yeah. Plug and play, pop
install
it
onto the server. Server sits underneath the MD's desk or in a cupboard somewhere. Great, it works. Doesn't need to be looked at again.
And the product fee for that, we won't talk numbers, but the product fee is extremely low compared to the other version of it, just because, like you say, it's almost like a plug and fire and forget. You pop it on there just so they can use the server capabilities. Now, the way the licensing works, we're about to hit you with a lot of information on CALs and processors and cores. On your server, you will have processors or your cores, and the way you license it is based on the server setup you have. However, that's a conversation for another time. I have actually recorded another webinar for Ingram that explains all of that in
Perfect.
How it works. So, like I said, Windows Server 2019 Essentials, only up to 25 users and 50 devices. Not more than that. If they have more than that, they need to go up to standard.
And that is a hard stop. There's no way of upgrading beyond that. It's 25 users, 50 devices. So if you believe your end user might have more than 25 users or 50 devices at some point during the lifetime of that server, you really should be installing standard.
Yeah, minimum. But this is based on the licensing. You license per processor. So this is we're about to go through the differences. So you buy your Server Essentials and you buy your license per processor, and there's no CAL required at all. So there's three different versions of Windows Server. You've got Windows Server Essentials, which is only up to 25 users. That is the maximum of 25 users, of 50 devices.
Correct, yeah.
Like I said, if you think they're going to have more than 25 users or 50 devices in the lifetime of their server, this is non-negotiable. They need to go to standard because it will only support up to 25.
Yeah.
On board with that one? Yep.
Absolutely.
How that's licensed, do you want to explain the licensing on that one? on the Essentials?
So, very simple. One copy of Microsoft Essentials, Windows Server Essentials, goes onto the server, and that's it. It's simple. But let's move on and let's look at standard and data center.
Cool. So there's no CALs required on that either.
Absolutely.
So CALs, client access license. You don't need to license that. Don't even worry about that on those ones.
So with standard and data center, we have to ensure that the number of cores that we have on the server are licensed correctly. We then need to ensure the number of virtual machines that the customer wants to run on the server are allowed for. And then we need to ensure that the number of devices or users that are accessing that server are licensed correctly. So let's cover that off bit by bit. So initially, the cores. So we sell a server. We know whether it's single, dual, quad socket. We know how many cores each processor that's going in there has. We have to license all the cores. So you can't put in a 20-core CPU and then say, oh, we're only going to use 16 of them for Windows Server. You have to license all 20. Windows Server Standard and Data Center out of the box are licenses you for 16 cores. Then with Dell, you can add 16-core or 2-core add-on packs to make sure that all of your licenses are covered.
It's not as confusing as it makes out to be. I'm going to, not saying that was confusing, but when we start talking cores processors, it can become a bit of a confusion around that going,
No, so on standard, for example, we basically have 3 part numbers.
Yeah.
We have the first copy of the operating system. We then have a 2-core or 16-core upgrade stuff.
And there's a way you can do it to make it.
And it's relatively simple.
But, if we say that Windows Server Essentials is only for business up to 25 users, now when you look at standard and data center, there's not really a limit of how many users you can have on it. So, we're not saying that after 25 users, but then up to 500 users, you need standard, over 500, you need data center. It's all about actually what you're using those servers for. So, for example, Server 2019 standard is really for physical environments or that's got minimal virtualization. So it's not end users that are fully embracing cloud or virtual application deployment or, having stuff in Azure or Azure stacks off premise. Standard would be for companies that maybe want to look at doing that in the future, but they're just future-proofing themselves and they just want the newest stuff. Again, it's for physical or minimally virtualized environments. Data center, there's quite a big jump in cost from standard to data center licensing.
There is, but you've got to bear in mind that's so data center is going to give you unlimited virtual machines. Windows Server Standard, be it 2016 or 2019, gives you a maximum of 2 virtual machines. So if you've got a customer who wants 4 VMs, well, you just double up all of the licensing that you've done initially for those cores. If they want 8, you're quadrupling it up again, at which point you then start to look at it and think, well, actually, this customer, they really should be looking at data center, especially with all the other features that come with data center, like the secure VMs, like if they want to go into clustering and hyperconverged. Again, that's the data center product.
Yeah. So, in a simple way of looking at it, data center is the all singing, all dancing for people that are using highly virtualized data centers and massively reliant and dependent on the cloud, to make advantage of that. Standard is for physical environments or a little bit of virtualization going on, and Server Essentials is just up to 25 users. You still need your CALs on the data center as well. And why we're talking about CALs and licensing is also to look at, so on Server Essentials 19, don't need a base CAL, and CAL for RDS, so Remote Desktop Services, is not applicable. If you do want to do the Active Directory Rights Management Service, so RMS, there is a separate RMS CAL that you have to buy additive on top of that. For the standard and the data center edition, if you want to use RDS or RMS, you do need to buy additional CALs for both of those. So essentially, if you've got a user with RDS and RMS, they'll need one Windows Server 2019 base CAL, standard data center. They'll need one RDS CAL, and they will need one RMS CAL.
So that's when the costs start mounting up.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Exactly.
When we talk about the CALs,
Yes.
one thing that a lot of resellers don't appreciate is that the client access licenses, there are two types of CALs. There's user and device. If we're asked to quote and we've not been told which one the customer wants, we will always default to the user CALs. 80% of the time, it's an 80-20 thing going on there. Most people want user CALs. The user CALs and device CALs are not BIOS locked in any way. And if you take a step back and think about it, neither Microsoft or Dell or HP nobody knows what brand of product is going to be connected onto the server. And in fact, it doesn't matter. Any brand of any manufacturer's kit can connect to a Dell PowerEdge server. Those client access licenses are only used so that the end user can turn around at any time and say, yes, I am fully compliant with Microsoft's licensing rules. They don't need to type in license keys anywhere. So literally, we're through the resellers, we're selling an envelope with a license key. It gets filed away. It never gets touched again until somebody has to prove that they're compliant.
Yeah, it just basically means you're compliant on there, really. What you just said then was really interesting. I wanted to breach on that is you can go by user or by device.
Yeah.
Now, if no one's ever come across that before, a school would be a great one to use as a per device license, because you may have, not every single student will have their own laptop and their own user. You might have 1,000 users in a school environment. They might have 500 fixed machines that at any one point a user needs to log on to. In that case, you would license the device.
Or a 24-hour call centre where you've got people coming in on shifts and are using the same equipment.
Yeah.
Again, there are less devices than there are users, so the lower cost route is to license the devices.
And then on the flip side of that, if you have an office like Ingram Micro, for example, you have remote workers, you'll have hot deskers, you'll have people that will jump around. They need to be they need to be licensed per user, because at any one time, all of those users could log on technically at the same time onto the network. The devices are all out there, but yes, it's per users when you need to do a company, but when it's more of a less devices than people, it's per device.
And another thing to throw in there is when that user or device has been licensed, we don't care how many servers you're connecting to. If you've got one server, you need a license to access. If you're accessing 200 servers, it's still the one client access license. While we're talking about ROC licenses, I need to talk about the promotions that Dell run every quarter. So we're currently in Dell's Q1. The promotion is there with Windows Server 2016. So if you buy a Dell server with a ROC server license on the same invoice, there is a cost saving. There's a cost saving to the reseller, and typically the price is coming in at about £125 less than buying the two items individually. But there's also a cost saving to the end user. Every quarter there is an end user cashback, and right now that's £130. So any server that's been purchased before May the 3rd, the end user can go to Dell's cashback website, and we'll include the URL on the PowerPoint stack here. And as long as they're claiming after 30 days of when they bought the product, they can claim back their £135. Very simple. The promotions for the rest of the year will be moving from 2016 to 2019. So I'll quickly cover off the costs. There is a price premium for 2019 over 2016. And the easiest way to explain this to the end user is, well, 2016's been out for 3 or 4 years. The price hasn't changed since the day it was released. So 2019 has about 11 to 14% price premium over 2016. But as we've explained with the features and the differences, they're getting more for their money anyway. But as we move forward and as the promotions move from 2016 to 2019, that price difference will disappear. So on this podcast, we're going to be talking about Dell PowerEdge servers. We're going to be talking about Microsoft Windows Server 2016, 2019, and we want to give the reseller account managers who are going out in front of the end user the right information so that they can position the hardware and they can position the operating system correctly so that the end user is able to make the right commercial decision and move ahead on Dell hardware with Microsoft Windows Server 2019. If we think about people in our audience that are going to visit their end user, and more often than not, it's not a greenfield site. That customer's got an existing Microsoft Windows Server environment, and we want to take them from whatever they're running today through to 2019. So can we just cover off some of the issues and the simplified responses that Microsoft will have?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the biggest thing when you're asking people to change or when you're telling people to change, quite frankly, some don't want to. Some are happy running 2012 revision 2 or 2016, and for them, they don't need to move to 19. They just need to be licensed. They need to make sure their licenses are in date. So Microsoft kind of have a rule that you can backdate to 2 previous versions of what the product is. So if someone's running a 2012 license and they need to license again, well, actually they buy a 2019 license, they put that license key in, and what it essentially allows them to do is carry on running the exact same 2012 license and the exact same 2012 experience. However, when they do want to go up to 19, they're fully licensed and ready to go. So how that would work in terms of buying the license in, you'd buy the license, you'd get the license key in the media, you just wouldn't do anything with the media at all. You just pop the license key in and it worked absolutely perfectly.
Which makes perfect sense because it's not possible to buy Windows Server 2012 anymore. The end user has to buy 2016 or 2019.
They do.
So what we're saying is, well, if they're going to do that, they may as well buy 2019.
Yeah, future-proofing yourself.
Deploy 2012 today using their license key, but in 6, 9, 12, 18 months' time, when they're ready to make that move, they've got everything they need.
Exactly, yeah. They have, they've got the media there ready to install, and like you say, they're licensed for it. But the harsh reality is some people we go to, Windows 19 is such a powerful and incredibly game-changing tool when we're looking at running off-premise or running through Azure and being able to deploy apps and everything like that. But the brutal reality is some people just don't need that. Some people just need a network to run, and they might only have 2 or 3 servers running on there. So for them, we don't want to be making them do something and actually giving them extra workload by learning how to deploy a new server and manage a new server and use all these new tools. But like you hit on the point there, we're future-proofing people to make sure that come the day, they're ready to go for it. They're ready on it. Exactly the same with 2016. So if you buy a license, if you've got 2016 media, you've made the switch from 2012 or even 2008 to 2016, actually going to an end user and saying, oh, you need to change your server again to 2019. We get it. We know that not everyone wants to do that, because if they don't need to do it at the moment, then why are we making them do it? We're giving them the option of saying, hey, do you know what? You've got the license for 19. When you're ready to make the move, we're there behind you to support it, and you can upgrade and use the features for it. It is really clear. So some of the features we've talked about in here, sort of such as the shielded VMs for Linux, if they buy a 2019 license, they will not be able to use that unless they are using 2019. So again, on some of the supported documents we'll make sure they're sent out with this podcast, there's a list of things here that show all these amazing features for 2019. If they buy a license for 2019, it doesn't mean they get them unless they're in a fully deployed 2019 environment. Does that make sense?
Excellent.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you very much.
as a foot to this podcast, there will be some communications going out with a couple of links on there. I'm going to give you guys some links so you can have a look at exactly what is happening in 2019. So if we start off, the first thing I will make sure you have is you can have a Server 2019 preview for free for all of your customers when you go and visit them. And that's a preview version that shows all the interfaces, how it works, what the differences between them are. And that can just sit on any device, and it's a really good tool to have when you're talking about it. Off the back of that as well, I'm also going to send you a link where you can all download Windows Admin Center. Now, Windows Admin Center, again, although Dell have their own version of it, and it works very close with ours, it's a great thing to kind of visualize when we start talking about how easy it is to manage the networks and how easy it is to manage all the servers and the server loads. It's a dummy server that I've got set up on my own back in Microsoft, and it allows anyone at any point to go in and they can make changes to all the servers. They can show how easy it is to deploy, move a server from one to another, and that's that. You can't break it. It's absolutely fine. So it's a safe environment to play with. And then off the back of that as well, there's also a couple of things I've got. So I've got a licensing data sheet. I've got a Server 2019 FAQ, which basically is just a 2-pager, the most common questions I get asked, saying, why Server 2019? What exactly is 2019? What's the best way to do it? And what's the version for me? And then there's also some information as well on what shielded virtual machines are, because I'm very aware that I've talked about things like Hyper-V and server containers and Linux, and actually, in sales, I get it. This is the most important thing for me to be talking about. For you guys on the road, I know that actually you've got a million and other one things to do. So I've just kind of tried to make it as easy as possible it is for you and your customers to understand exactly what we talk about when we say it. So it's got a glossary, it's got some cheat sheets, and it's got a load of stuff on there. So yeah, check it out. If you've got any questions at all, contact Trevor. If you've got any questions at all about anything, make sure you contact your relevant account manager within Ingram or Trevor to talk anything to do with Dell licensing or Windows Server 2019. And I'll also be working with Ingram quite closely over the next 3 months to record some more podcasts and some more webinars around server and the rest of the Microsoft family.
So we have a central mailbox for the Dell Enterprise team. It's Dell Enterprise UK at ingrammicro.com. And any quote requests, any pre-sales technical inquiries that you have, send them to that email address. We work on a 2-hour SLA. If we need to revert back to Dell or to Microsoft or on any particular queries, we'll tell you, and we'll work to a 24-hour SLA on that one. But that central mailbox is where our team live and breathe.
Thank you very much for checking out our podcast. It's been good. I've enjoyed it. And catch you on the next one.